welcome to my escape. Today I wanted to do a Mafia Man video, okay? I would love to just do a Mafia video, but I only have 2 on here where I could really consider them Mafia women. I would love to have more, so drop your X below. Mafia romance, dark Mafia romance, whatever you want to call it. We're here for the more than morally gray, slightly unhinged, very illegal, criminal-esque, I run the mafia type of romances. I read a lot of them. I quite like them. I went through a whole mafia phase last year, and then I think I'm going back into my era now again. So I figured, why not do a recommendation video based on all the mafia I've read, because lots of the stuff about the mafia genre I don't actually like. But I like to read mafia, which is confusing, and I don't even understand it. So I figured I would just include them all, give you a description, my thoughts, and you can decide for yourself whether you're going to pick it up or not. We're going to jump in with my second favorite mafia series of all that I've read, and then we'll end the video with my first, because I realized I like to end the videos on a positive note. So we're going to end the video with my top favorite mafia series, and we're going to start with my second favorite. My cat is in the window and he's trying to eat bugs on the other side of the glass. I'm like, buddy, you can't get at them, but you know what? Let him live his life. So not only is this my second favorite series, it's also my first mafia series and what I dipped my toe into first in the genre, and that is the Made Men series by Danielle Laurie. So the first one, The Sweetest of Oblivion, follows Nico and Elena. Nico is a mafia man, made man. So a made man, I really think, is just somebody that was born into the mafia world and kind of raised under their creepy raising mechanisms where they like kill people by the age of like 12, like all this really unhealthy stuff. Okay, I think that's what a made man is, but that's not just a Danielle Laurie term, that's kind of across the mafia genre. Nico is actually a mafia man, made man, but he's engaged to Elena's sister because Elena's kind of like the prize jewel of the family, and the sister was expendable. Okay, people in this genre are not very nice to each other, but that's pretty much how it's set up. So while he's getting to know the family and all these like mergers are happening and everything, there's tension between Nico and Elena instead of Nico and his bride-to-be. So that's going on. It's kind of like they can't resist each other. They don't really know why they're attracted to each other, but it's just fire. It's just chemistry. And then it kind of spirals from there. I actually like this one. I didn't think I would. A, because it was my first mafia, and B, because I wasn't sure about like stealing a man from your sister kind of thing. But her sister really had no interest in this whatsoever, so it's not any like vibes of like cheating or anything like that. The sister was not interested, did not care about this man whatsoever. I did find the chemistry between Nico and Elena top tier. Nico was very much the touch her and die vibes. I kind of loved it. There's this gas station scene. People think it's overkill. I think it's not. Hence why I like to read dark romance and mafia romance. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I liked where the story went. It was definitely hot, definitely spicy, and their chemistry was on par. So I think I actually rated this pretty high. I think I gave this 4 stars, and I definitely would recommend. So the second one in the series is The Maddest Obsession, and this one follows Christian and Gianna. And I did a reread of this in February, I think. But tell me why, in my mind, I loved this book, but I ranked it lower than the first one. Confused. My own rankings confuse me. It's very moody. Okay, it's very moody. That's why I like to talk about the books instead, so you can kind of get like the vibe rather than like my critique when I actually go in and rank it. So The Maddest Obsession is probably my favorite of the series, definitely the most memorable of the series to me. Christian is an FBI agent, but he's like a crooked FBI agent, and I'm not really here for the crooked cops. It's not my vibe. But that's really not a part of the story at all. They just kind of say it and you're like, okay, so he's basically in the mafia. He's not a made man, but he's basically in the mafia. And Gianna is a woman of the mafia, grew up in it her whole life, and she has been married, I think, 3 times to mafia men, but they're like significantly older than her, kind of gross, and just not it, but it's kind of like the life of a woman in this mafia world. And Christian comes across her path couple times in several years, so the story does do a bunch of time jumps, them getting to know each other, them running into each other and everything like this, and then ultimately they just can't stay away from each other. But they're complete opposites. So Christian definitely does have that neurodivergent OCD kind of personality where he's not diagnosed. He is in therapy. He's not fully diagnosed, but it is very borderline. I'd be questioning the therapist on that one and be like, get a second opinion. But anyways, He does everything in a specific pattern, in a specific order, and he's very cataloged and organized in everything he does. And Gianna is like the biggest mess out there, okay? Definitely a hard upbringing, definitely some trauma in the past, definitely trauma from these forced relationships, definitely trauma from being in the mafia, and she's really just trying to make through and get through. So she's a huge mess. She attracts attention, she wears outlandish things, her house is always messy, but like you love her, you're obsessed with her. She's funny, she's carefree, but also has like a lot of like demons inside, but it's kind of just like what she projects to the world. And you're really just rooting for her and you want the best for her. And Christian's like, oh my god, I can't handle the mess that you are. And she's like, well, deal with it because this is what I am. And I love that. I love how they were just complete opposites and they just couldn't get each other off their minds. They couldn't get away from it. There was stuff keeping them apart that were actually like true obstacles rather than a lot of books that I'm like, you could easily just get around this and do your thing, you know? But yeah, so I think that book takes place over a series or over like 7 years or something like that. And I love books with time apart and time jumps and time gaps. I think time is really like functional to me understanding and believing a relationship, because if it's like 3 months and you're like, I'm in love, I'm like, are you? Or is this gonna fade, you know? So I love the time jumps. Definitely would recommend. You can read the series in order. You can read it in whatever order you want. You don't have to even read them all if only one grabbed your attention. If it's only one, read this one. I like this one a lot. And then the last in the series follows Mila and Ronan. And this is a captor-captive relationship. This was my first captor-captive. I haven't read a lot of them because I don't really like that trope. And I think it started with this book. So I ranked this book really low. I ranked it 2 stars. But it does give those like mafia vibes. If you like captor-captive, I actually do like a lot in the story. Just, it was a little too dubious for me, if you know what I mean. So I like my relationships a little more consensual. Like, I understand like the chemistry, you can't say no, but I think for the most part, Mafia has a lot of like age gap in it. But I do remember like a definitive age gap in this one. It's also a revenge story. Ronan and Mila are kind of part of rival mafias, but not even the Bravta. So they're Russian. So this primarily takes place in Russia, but she's part of like a faction that broke off that's in Russia, but she doesn't know because she's been raised in like secret, essentially. She doesn't know her dad's a part of this. She goes to Russia looking for her heritage and trying to look into like who her mother was and all that, because she was raised by her father. And she gets picked up by the Russian mafia, or Russian Bravta, who knows exactly who she is. So she gets kidnapped and held for ransom against her father, and Ronan's her captor and leader of that faction in Russia. So they have a lot of animosity between them, obviously because she got kidnapped and she loves her father and she doesn't know what this world is. And her father did really bad stuff to the guy, to Ronan, and he can't really forgive him. So what I did like about this book was that she's vegan, and he's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But he accommodates. And I was like, yes, get an accommodating captor. Frankly, yes, we're here for that. I did like also that there was dogs in this. They're basically guard dogs, right? They're mafia dogs, and she tries to befriend them. And I just love seeing characters interact with animals, and I just love it so much. Especially when you can like win over a dog that only likes you. I'm a big fan. I don't know what that trope is called, but I like that one. There's also like the other woman in this one. I don't really love when drama has to be created for 2 women going after the same man. I just don't really care, especially when you have to depict the one as like really, really like, I don't know, stereotypical and a little misogynistic, you know? But that is in this one. It's not a big part. It's kind of ignorable for the most part. It didn't really take away from that aspect for me. Some people really love that. Some people really hate that. Just going in, that is in there. But captor-captive just really isn't for me. But it is a good book. If you like that trope, I would recommend this one. The next series is the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. This is a series that people absolutely love. The amount of creators I follow on both YouTube and Instagram that are trying to collect multiple versions and multiple covers of this like 6 or 7 book series, to me is crazy. But going into that, just know people love it. I didn't really love it. I only read the first one and I have no interest whatsoever of jumping into the series. But the first one is Brutal Prince. So it follows Callum and Ada, and they're part of rival mafias. They're both young-ish, and Ada essentially does something one night that forces the families to either go to war or bridge the disturbance with the marriage. And they decided to marry Callum from the one family and Ada from the other, and then create kind of like a powerhouse between the two mafias. Well, Callum and Ada are not for this whatsoever. They did not get off on a good foot. They do not like each other, and it is truly enemies to lovers. Okay, like actually enemies. Like they both try to kill each other, I think a couple times. That's kind of where it diverges for me. I really didn't like Callum. I thought some of what he did took it too far, but it's also a double standard because I loved Ada and she took it too far too. And I'm like, kind of like, go girl. Whereas in his terms, I was like, you actually need to cool off. Like, that was a bit ridiculous. So I understand the double standard, and I understand that's not necessarily fair, but also as characters, I loved Ada, so I just supported her more. Callum, I didn't like at all. Like, at all. I thought he was a complete tool. Did not like him at all, okay? I don't really care to follow politicians, and Callum's trying to become, like, the top politician in the city, and I just didn't care what he was doing. But I did like how Ada offered something. And a lot of these, like, the women are very underrated, and they don't actually offer anything to the mafia or to the situation, and they're treated very, very poorly, and they're not really given the opportunity. But Ada was kind of, I don't know, given the opportunity, or just like the world was a little more dynamic for women, but she does understand the side of the politics a lot better, and she does understand like the back, like underground things that are going on, and she can bridge the two. So she comes up with a lot of ideas to kind of help Callum's campaign and like manipulate people essentially. So it does seem like they're going to be a power duo. So in the end, I was kind of rooting for them to be together, but also I didn't really care because I was like, Ada will be fine either way. Callum needs to get out. The other thing with this book is that it felt like there was two plot lines going on the whole time, and I didn't think that they both needed to be in the same book. I didn't really care about the like ex. Okay, there's this whole subplot going on about like her ex won't leave her alone, and I just didn't care. Like at all. And then that just like got more and more and more dramatic, and I was like, am I even reading like the same book? Like I feel like it's very like separate, and it's just there together, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. I really liked Ada a lot, but I have no interest in continuing the series. And again, that's just me because some people like this is one of their favorite series ever. But yeah, the second one is Stolen Heir. I think that's a captor-captive one, so again, if you like that captor-captive thing, maybe hop into it. Next series is the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. So I have only read one of the series so far, but I do want to read them all. I don't know, however, if they are all Mafia based. But this one is wretched. It is kind of loosely, like very loosely, a Wizard of Oz retelling. This follows Evelyn and Nicholas. I think Nicholas goes by like a fake name for half the book, so I'm just going to call him Nicholas. I don't remember what his fake name was. But anyways, Nicholas is an undercover cop, and Evelyn is a daughter of like a very like lowly mafia, and Nicholas is tasked with understanding how this very like lowly mafia is producing this very like addictive drug that's making them bringing in all this cash, kind of where this came from, how they had the infrastructure, how this mafia that's very underrated is able to create as much havoc as it is. And so he's going in to discover who the cook is. Evelyn, daughter of the mafia man, she's the cook. She's the brains behind the whole operation, but nobody knows it except for her father and possibly her sister, but I don't even think her sister knows. So the secret's kept very, very close to home, which is why no one knows it, and she's the brains behind the whole operation. Well, before Nicholas goes undercover to celebrate his new job, he has a one-night stand at a bar, which happens to be Evelyn. And then he walks into the mafia, and Evelyn's like, this is suspicious. You are suspicious. You gave me a different name last night, etc., etc. So the suspicion is set right from the beginning. She's also just a very suspicious person because she has all these secrets and she's had to fight and climb for every ounce of respect she's ever gotten. So she's suspicious of him right off the bat, and he's like, this is not good because I need to win her over because I need to do my job. I loved it. I loved it so much. Evelyn is actually a little bit evil, and I love it. I'm here for it. Yes, bring me the wicked women, okay? Yes. Loved it. The end, fabulous. Would recommend. Eventually I will be picking up the rest of the series. I don't know why I haven't, but it will happen. So the next Mafia series is the Camorra Chronicles by Cora Riley. That's a lot of C's. But anyways, I started with the second book, Twisted Pride. So I messed that up. The second book in the series is Twisted Emotions. The third book in the series is Twisted Pride. So do know for this one, there are sexual assault trigger warnings and child molestation trigger warnings. This one follows Nino and Chiara, and they are kind of not necessarily rival mafias, but different mafias that kind of sometimes work together, but are still very much like nervous of one another. So the Camorra brothers, I think that's their last name, they're very close knit, like fought tooth and nail to be where they are, and they make all the other mafias very uncomfortable because they're too like, I don't know, aggressive. But Chiara is like the daughter of a trader in her mafia, so she has been raised by her aunt and uncle, and she's been very much neglected and sexually abused. She has a lot of trauma from that incident, and then also just being like hidden and despised by the community that is supposed to be her family. And to kind of build a bridge, someone has to get married off to one of these brothers from this other mafia that everyone's afraid of, and she's kind of again expendable. So she gets married off to him, and everyone thinks like basically like she's done, like she's in for a tough life if she even lives through it. So that's kind of like the start. Flash to the other side, because this is dual POV, and Nino is very cold. Like, he doesn't have any emotions, he doesn't feel anything, he's just cold and he's calculated, and that's his life. So he's doing this because he wants that bridge, that tie to the other mafia will be really good for his mafia and for his brothers and just for their empire that they're trying to build. So he's just like, okay, I will marry her. And then she's terrified of him, like absolutely terrified of him. And he kind of realizes something's going on. And then it's just them trying to navigate this new relationship where they have to be together, but they don't actually have to like be together. You know, if you know what I mean? And it is just them kind of coming to terms with their new life. And there is no like actual therapy going on, but spicy ways of working through her trauma and her past and trying to kind of help her process and deal with what happened, and also continue to live her life and not let it hinder everything because she's afraid of any man. She's very uncomfortable sitting in the rooms with the other brothers and stuff like that. So watching them work through that, although it's not like realistic in any means, and like I definitely would be a proponent of therapy, watching them work through it in the book was really, really like heartwarming and sweet and just beautiful. So I really did enjoy this read. Definitely would recommend, but do know that there are those triggers going in. Another warning for all of the books I'm talking about: dark romance comes with trigger warnings. Okay, if you're wanting to get into it, if you're wanting to jump into anything new, if I didn't say in front of everyone like check the trigger warnings, I'm saying it now. Check the trigger warnings of every dark romance you pick up. I just want everyone to have a safe reading experience, and that I think is the best way to go about it at this point. So I picked up the next in the series, which is Twisted Pride, which follows Nino's older brother Remo, who actually runs the mafia, and he's like the head capo of the mafia. He kidnaps someone else's bride. So it's Remo and Serafina, and it's their story, and she's a kidnapped bride from another mafia that Remo wanted to piss off. So the underlying threat throughout this whole book of sexual assault was not for me at all. I found it overkill, I found it very creepy, and Remo never redeemed himself, even just from the threatening. Serafina, I did like her to a degree. I did like how she was a mafia woman who stood up for herself. I just couldn't get over the threats though, and the fact that none of the other people in the story, even though they knew these threats were like legitimate and actually going on, did anything about it. Like literally anything. It actually made me dislike the characters I previously liked from the first book a lot. And I have no interest in continuing with the series after this. Each book follows a different brother, and I just don't want to be a part of it. Not my favorite. Again, some people, this is their favorite of the series. Some people, it's their favorite mafia. Some people love it. So give it a go if what I've said has intrigued you, but for me, wasn't for me. The next is the Darkverse series. I think it's a 6-book series, and it follows 3 couples, so each couple gets kind of like a duology, so they get 2 books, and then the next 2 books follow the next couple, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to pick up the rest of the series. Okay, I've read the first one. The first one is The Predator. It's all over Instagram, or it was all over Instagram a couple weeks ago, and people were like, oh my god, a dark mafia romance where both parties are dark and capable themselves. And I was like, yes, that's what I need. More strong female characters in these books. Although that was the case, I don't think that it lives up to the hype that it had. This follows Tristan and Morena. Tristan hates her from the beginning, but they're forced to work together on something because it is a threat to both their mafias. Again, rival mafia gangs. And Morena is like this computer hacker who's supposed to be a genius. I don't think that was actually shown whatsoever. And Tristan is like the scariest scary man out there. And they team up. That kind of sounds like a good team, like a strong team. I didn't find that they were that strong. I didn't find that they were that efficient. I didn't find that they were that good in this investigation. I found that for 3/4 of the book, all they did was stare at each other, which was a weird choice, and I wasn't loving it as a reader. Tristan also hates her for something that she doesn't know about, and he hates her for like all of the book. And when you find out why, I'm just like, so no spoilers, so I'll leave it at that. The next series is Tate James' Hades series. I really like the series. It isn't standalone though. So all the series before, I guess aside from the last one, which is like Sets of Duologies, the rest have been standalones. So they all follow a different couple in the series, and you can pick up any in any order and read it kind of like that. These ones follow the same relationship and the same characters, so you have to read it in order. So I've read the first 3. There's 4 in the series. The first one is Seventh Circle. So this follows Hayden, who is head of her own mafia, kind of like, I would say this is a borderline motorcycle club, but gives me more mafia vibes. And she's kind of young. She's like 23, and she's running her whole own mafia, her own show, and she's kind of thrust into this role. The other mafias that she kind of controls, because she's got the most powerful one, they both respect and look down on her at the same time. So she's always like clinging to power, like maintaining what she has, and she can't let anybody in or let anybody close because she has to be this big bad boss. There's a lot of background information, background stories that are kind of coming up and like affecting what's going on now. And there's also 3 love interests. So you have like a golden retriever guy, Lucas, and then there's Cass, who is the leader of a different mafia. I think he's in his 30s, so it's a bit of an age gap, and he just thinks he's too bad for her, but also wants to like support her. And then there's her best friend, who I think is named Zed. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I freaking love Lucas. He is so cute. So the next series is called The Sinner series by Michelle Hurd. I've only read one. I read Captured by a Sinner. I'm not saying I necessarily wouldn't read any of the others, but Captured by a Sinner did not take me away. So this follows Victor, and I don't even remember the girl's name. So her. We're just going to go with pronouns, her. So it follows Victor and her family got murdered by Victor and his friends when she was like 17. That's what you open on. And her father and like the mafia branch had pissed off the other mafias. So Victor and his friends came in and killed them. And then they were like, well, we can't kill a child, so we're just gonna keep her. And Victor takes her home. And then he's like, I'm gonna keep you here till you're an adult, and then I will set you free. And she's like, well, I'm an adult in 5 days. And he's like, JK, I need more time with you. Questionable. So you're not an adult until 21. I don't know why he just gets to dictate that. But so she just lives with him till she's 21. And I'm like, what? And then, yeah, she goes in, that's that, and then they slowly fall in love. But do they? But they slowly fall in love over these 3 years. So again, it's Captor Captive. There's actually a lot on this list that are Captor Captive, which I didn't realize starting in, but wasn't my favorite at all. I did like Victor. I liked his relationships with his friends and his relationships with his family, and what he did to like make her comfortable in his home, I thought was like really, really cute, and was just like a book lover's like wet dream. But I didn't feel any chemistry or connection between the 2 of them, and I was like, what did you actually do for 3 years? Because then you jump 3 years in the future to when she's actually 21, and then the rest of the book like goes from there. You get very little at the beginning and nothing in between, and I'm like, what? Wouldn't your mind be absolutely fried if for 3 years you only saw one person, you didn't like him? I mean, I guess there's the family too, but like you saw a very limited amount of people. You didn't go to school, you didn't have a job, you didn't have any aspirations, you weren't working towards a goal, you didn't literally do anything. My mind would be fried. I'd be so bored. So bored. We just don't talk about that apparently in this book. So there was a lot like left out that I was like, what? And we just like pick up 3 years later, which wasn't a time gap I like, even though I usually like time gaps. And I didn't feel any chemistry between them the whole book. I didn't like their story. I didn't like her. She was really irritating to me. Yeah, that's an option. I did like the world, and I did like the interconnection with the family and everything that the rest of the book follows, or his friends, I can't remember. So I do think I would carry on with the series, but like this book specifically, like the relationship showed me nothing. Also, I'm just gonna twist you guys because my cat's being really cute. So I have like my notes and my laptop up there, and then he just curled up on it and he keeps flicking his tail over my screen because he likes his attention and not me focused on other things. But isn't he freaking cute? Sorry, back to me. But he's so cute. Next series is Perfectly Imperfect. I don't know how to pronounce the author's name, so sorry. But I've read books 1 and 5 in this series. They're all standalone, so you can read whatever ones you want. I don't really think I'd be pushing to finish the series or read the rest of them. Neither one of the books really jumped out at me. I saw them separately on Instagram on different reels, and I was like, oh, like, those look good. I like some of that stuff. And neither one of them blew me out of the water. So the first one is Painted Scars. It follows Nina and Ronan. They're both a part of the Italian Mafia, sort of, somehow. She's not really, her dad is like the accountant for them, but her dad messes up big time. And Ronan is like, you know what? I'm gonna kill you or you're gonna give me your daughter to wed because I need her for something. And that's kind of like what happens. So then there's a little bit of a plot that she's involved with, and then it does become clear why he chose her and why he needed her specifically, because in a lot of these it's just like instant chemistry and they're like obsessed with you based off of like almost nothing. But here it's like he needed her for a specific reason and a specific trait she possessed, and that then allowed them, through the forced proximity and the fake dating and all that, to actually build a relationship. So that part wasn't bad. I just don't know if I really cared about them, and there was a lot in there that just gives me the ick, like extreme height differences. Not for me, creepy. Also just kind of like the author's continuation of making her childlike. Very creepy in a spice book. Very, very creepy. Weird choice. Weird direction to take it. And then I read Stolen Touches, which was book 5. It follows Melina or something like that, and Salvatore. And this one was way too possessive for me. And books can be possessive, but normally, like, you learn to overcome or to deal with, or it gets pointed out as like, hey, this is wrong. And instead, she just accepted every little quirk. Red flag. But every little quirk he kind of introduced, she was just like, oh yeah, okay, sure, if it makes you more comfortable. I'm like, what about your level of comfortable? Like, this doesn't even make sense. But anyways, yeah, so I felt that that was overkill. She also had to give up too much for this to work, and there was no intention of her ever, like, seeing any kind of return on that stuff, and she didn't really, in my mind, put up enough of a fight for anything that was actually integral or important to her. So that I just thought was weird and was, like, lacking in character. And he was just a walking red flag and irritating, and not the fun kind of red, not the attractive kind of red that you run towards, the actual red where you're like, you're too much. I don't want anything to do with you. So yeah, just was kind of boring, gives you the Mafia vibe. So for me getting back into Mafia, it gave me the vibes I was looking for, but it wasn't outstanding, wasn't remarkable, and I've already forgotten about these 2 books. So won't be continuing on with the series, but they are an option and they are on KU, so they're a free option as well. Most of these books are on Kindle Unlimited, to be honest, because I don't think I actually own on my shelves a single Mafia romance, which is unfortunate because I really do like the genre. Here's Katie Roberts' Wicked Villain series. Now this is more erotica than dark romance, but it's still Mafia-esque, so I'm including it. So I didn't read them in order, and I haven't read all of them because there's 6 and I think I've only read 4. But the first one in the book is Desperate Measures, and it is kind of like a primal kink CNC sort of thing. And I was not about it initially. When I saw that there was a Jasmine and Jafar erotic retelling, I was like, dolls. I should go to church. But then when I actually picked it up and read it, I was like, this is actually so good, and I love them. And I love them together, and they just complement each other, and they make each other stronger. And the ending, I obviously won't spoil anything, but the ending was best. Probably, I would say, the best ending of any in the series I've read so far, and I've been quite liking the series. But yes, would recommend. Jasmine and Jafar are from, like, opposite, I wouldn't call them mafias. The whole world is set around, like, there's, like, the underground, which he rules in the middle. And then think of, like, I think of it as like a circle. So Hades rules the mafia. Hades rules the middle, which is like neutral territory. And then think of like a pie being cut. And there's like 6 or 5 other factions that rules like a sliver of the city. So they're from the same sliver. Her dad ruled that territory, and Jafar was like his right-hand man. and Jasmine was his daughter. And then the dad is no longer, and Jafar's taking over, and he's like, Jasmine, you're gonna be here by my side. And she's like, oh, no thanks. And yeah, but the ending, top tier, top tier, top tier, top tier. I really love Jasmine. She really came into her own. Her character did develop as it went, and also was revealed. So not only did she develop, but like more of her was revealed, and I absolutely loved it, and I loved the ending. So I do recommend you read that one. Again, check triggers on all of these. In the next, like chronologically in the series, not the order I read them, but chronologically, I think Beast was the next one that I would have read. It is an MMF romance on Beauty and the Beast. There's Isabel and Gaten, and I think his name is just Beast, the third guy. Anyways, she's previously dated both Gaten and Beast, and they are like enemies of each other. And they both know that they both dated her and all that, and then she needs favors from both of them, and they're like, okay, but you broke both our hearts, and you're gonna give us like 2 weeks or something, and we get to do whatever we want to. And then after the 2 weeks are up, we will come help you. And she's like, you know what? Deal. So very kinky, but very good, very good. And I love them, and they're my whole heart and soul, and I just need them to be happy. I just need them to be happy. So it is polyamorous. There are sword crossings, and I just love them. I love them so much. They make me so happy. Most of these books are very like relationship based. You don't get much else in them. They do have like subplots that you follow. So on this one, it was her and her two sisters are what's left of the territory. Their dad just died, and they are now trying to secure their power within the territory. So that's kind of like the underlining tone, but most of these focus on like the relationships and the kink. And then there was A Worthy Opponent, which I think is book 5, and that one is a Hook and Tinkerbell retelling. So, I mean, okay. Tinkerbell has a dark past. She's been in some previous relationship trauma, and she's trying to get back on her feet, and she's kind of thrown out into the world years after this has happened, and knowing her ex is still on the loose and still after her. And Hook is an old friend of the ex's that kind of knows the history between them, but he's always been obsessed and in love with Tink. And now that he knows that she's like back around, he's like, you're gonna come with me, I'll protect you, but you're gonna have to marry me. So it's like forced marriage. But that's really cute, and then they work through some of that, and then the undertone is like her ex is still hunting her. And then the last one of the series I read was The Sea Witch, which is like a Little Mermaid kind of retelling. So it's Ursula, Eric, and Ariel. And I didn't like that one at all. I didn't feel like they had any chemistry. I don't feel like Ursula really overcame her villainous in any way. Not that she has to overcome it, but it just didn't make sense. So basically, Ursula and Eric are in a relationship, and he needs to be bought from Hades, but they don't have the money. And Ursula has an enemy. So Eric goes to the enemy and seduces the enemy's daughter, Ariel. And then Ariel, not knowing that Ursula and Eric have this history, goes, okay, I will sell myself to come up with enough money to buy you. Which is suspicious. And she essentially sells herself to Ursula. Yeah. So, a little messed up. And I just didn't feel any chemistry between them. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like their setup. I didn't think it was hot. I didn't think it was spicy. I didn't think it was anything. So that one I didn't like at all. But the rest in the series have been really good so far, and I've really, really enjoyed them. Okay, and then to end the video, it's my favorite Mafia romance series, the one that I love and have reread and will continue to reread, and that is Sinners Anonymous. So I'm going to start with the second and third, and then I'll go back to the first because that's the way I read them. But the second and third are Sinners Condemned and Sinners Consumed, and they follow the same couple, so they follow Rafe and Penny, and I love them. Essentially, there's this hotline that the brothers run. The brothers run the Mafia as well, but they run this hotline called Sinners Anonymous, and anyone can call in and confess their sins. And then once a month, all the brothers decide the worst sinner, and then they punish them. So that's the hotline. And Penny has been calling into this hotline like her whole life because she had a really terrible upbringing and no one to really support her. So she's basically used the hotline as like a diary. And Rafe runs the hotline. Now they meet in person. He doesn't know this and all that. And he just knows that she, walking in, she's like a grifter, a thief, a criminal, and she's his doom card because he believes in fate, and both of them are very superstitious. And she thinks she's like born lucky. Like she's just lucky. Like doesn't matter what she does, doesn't matter what she's in, she's just lucky. And he's like, I hate that you think that so much, because he's superstitious, but he tries to hide it and avoid that with all costs. But a fortune teller told him that this redhead Queen of Hearts would be his doom cards, and he's like, this is literally you, like I know this is you. So he tries to fight it, and she tries to fight it because he's dangerous and he's bad and he doesn't like her, so she tries to stay away, but they just can't stay away from each other. And like both of their demons play so well together. I love it so much. I love it so much. They're so like perfect together, and I love the story. I love the underlining tones of like luck and all this, and you do see more of like the mafia and what's going on that side, and like actual like politics of it, and like playing with like other mafias and things. I love the brothers when they talk together. There's 3 of them. I just love everything about it. I love the network of support and like friendship and love Penny is able to build around herself, especially like with her backstory and with her history. Guys, I just love it. I love it so much. I think I've reread it 2 or 3 times. Or no, I think I've like read the series 2 or 3 times. So like a 1 reread or like a 2 reread kind of thing. But I just love it. It makes me happy. It makes me smile. It gives me all the vibes that I want. And it's just so good. And it's got the best grovel in it ever. Best grovel in it. Yes. Love, 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 love. Would recommend that to literally everyone. The second one, I think, in my mind, is better than the first, but both are really good. And then the first one in the series, which I actually only read this month? Oh my god, was it this month? Spoiler if you watch my wrap up, was Sinners Anonymous. And Sinners Anonymous is the first in the series, and it follows Rafe's older brother, Antonio. And Antonio starts to fall for his uncle's like bride to be, Rory. And there's like a huge, like his uncle's like 70 and Rory's like 21. But Rory has goals and she's trying to protect some things, and she has to enter into this marriage contract with this mafia boss who's going to destroy what she wants to protect. So that's why she's there, and she feels trapped and stifled and basically just like this doll for this like creepy old man. Antonio, the more he interacts with his uncle's family, the more he sees her, the more he can't get her out of his head, and the more they kind of come together. And she calls the hotline because she's got some darker thoughts. She's very petty. I love Rory, okay? I love Rory. She's hilarious. So she uses that as kind of like her way to like control her urges. And then when she finds out that Antonio and like the family runs this thing, she's like, oh my god, like I can't, like he's got way too much dirt on me now. I can't use that anymore. So it kind of like builds up in her, and she needs to find like her own version of penance now. And he just kind of helps her with that. But that one I didn't love necessarily as much, but it was a fun time. I probably would do a reread anyways, because the 4th book about the 3rd brother is coming out in like September or somewhere in the fall, and I cannot wait, because the 4th one will be about like the one brother that's left, and then this friend of the other 2 girls, of Rory and Penny, this other friend, and I can't wait to find out what her backstory is and like what's kind of going on with there, because they've like teased it, but I don't really know. And I'm so excited. So I will probably do a reread of all of them before I hop into that one when it comes out. But I love the series. It's definitely my favorite mafia romance. If you want to take any books from here, I would say start with those, and specifically start with Sinners Condemned. Okay, I know it's the second in the series, but it's fine. But I would pick up Penny and Rafe's story if you're hopping into mafia romance. If you've been in deep and you've somehow missed it, go back and read it. I freaking adore the series, and that's my #1 recommendation for this video. So thanks for sticking to the end. Let me know if you pick any of them up, or let me know what your favorite mafia of the ones I've listed are. And please give me recommendations for strong mafia women, because really I have like Wretched and Hades, and that's pretty much it. And then I guess like in The Predator, Morana isn't bad, but I would like more. Okay, I would like more. Give me all the wicked female powerful vibes out there. Any recommendation you got, put it down in the comments below and I will pick it up, because I'm dying for it. That's all I got for you guys today. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I post videos every Friday and recently on a lot of Tuesdays, so ring that bell for notifications, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.